Yeah, that's correct. It's about grief. Um,
By asking questions and then I'll try and answer them.
yeah, that's fine. So the first question is, what does the topic grief mean to your religion?
Um, my immediate thought, and this is my personal thing, but I'm talking personally, but one talks about grief, one's thinking in terms of death and grieving for a dead person. That's my first thought. And I'm just thinking whether in Judaism there's a wider concept of grief, but I don't. So you grieve for the soul of the departed, or for a dead person.
Yeah.
There might be concepts of grieving for the loss of the. I don't know if you're aware of Jewish history, but there was the two temples that were built in Jerusalem. Both, and the last one was destroyed in AD 79 or something around that date by the Romans. So there is a sense of grieving for the loss of that temple.
Okay,
For that destruction.
Yeah.
So it comes in that. So people will fast on. In Jewish, it's the 9th of Av. They call it Tisha B'av. The 9th of Av is a month in the Jewish calendar. So that's a day of grieving, of fasting. For that loss. So it's very much immediately I was grieving for a dead person, but there is a sense of loss and grieving for disasters, calamities that have happened in the past as well.
Yeah, I understand.
Does that, yeah, I think that probably answers the question. Yeah, that's what's grief. I think that's what we think of in terms of grief. Hopefully, I'm giving a good answer there.
Yeah, it's all right. No answer is wrong. So the other question is, how does your religion do their funeral in Jewishism? Do they burn it, or do they bury it, or how do they do it?
With Judaism, it's actually, I don't know. I might be making a presumption out here, but if you're actually Muslim, which if you are, actually, you'll probably find it's almost identical in many respects from my little knowledge of Islam.
Yeah.
And when somebody dies in Judaism, they're buried. It's never burned. But there are some branches were more what they call progressive or liberal, which will accept it. But in Orthodox and mainstream Judaism, there's burial. It's burial. It's always burial, and the burial should be normally before sunset of the day after, or within the same day, or the next day after. The interment is within a day of the death.
That's correct.
I know that Christian friends, people who often the funeral is maybe 10 days after the interment is sort of 10 days after, maybe up to 10 days or more after the actual, after the actual death, which is all we find. So it says it's the other things associated with is that. Actually, in Judaism, normally you don't use a coffin. They don't use a coffin, but they do in this country.
Yeah,
but in other countries they don't. They just wrap people in a shroud and they're buried. But in this country, though, again, if the coffin has got to be very simple, no nails, metal, or anything like that. Very simple wood. Whereas again, the mainstream. Secular and Christian is you see, because we see on the television, coffins which are polished
that's
wood
correct.
and with brass fittings. There's nothing like that.
Yeah.
So it's a bit of a shock, because particularly young Jewish people, when they see that, they go to the burial of their parents and they say their father or mother, in what looks like nothing much more like a bit of a chipboard, but something which is plywood box, but that is the tradition. Judaism. Lots of traditions to do with Judaism, though, and death. I don't know. Maybe I might ramble on too much. So maybe just let you ask the next question.
No, it's fine. It's actually true, because Judaism and Islam is a bit similar. Even in Islam, it says you have to do the burial straight away between the sunset as well. and also the coffins should be just simple. But in unfortunate countries like Pakistan or India or Bangladesh, they tend to just bury it with the white cloth. That's it. So they don't have the facilities like in England they do have. So yeah.
I think I think what it is in Britain that the communities here are beginning to adapt some of it's partially the customs of the country, but it's not wrong in Judaism to bury in a box, but you don't have to. It's the other thing I could say associated with death is that the mourners traditionally will tear the clothes. They will rent the clothes, so it's just symbolic. You wear an old garment. And you use a pair of scissors, and just somebody just snips it. So that's the sign of mourning. After the funeral, it's the procedure is for them to think it's called shiva, which means it's Hebrew for the word 7, but also it also means, and it's all very similar to the word sitting. But for the mourning, and then the 7 days of mourning, where the mourners, the close relatives of the deceased, go back to their home or to their home. Traditionally, the friends of it will make for them I think call it a breakfast, the shiva, the morning breakfast, which usually includes an egg, which is like a symbol of continuity of life. And the mourners sit normally on low chairs, and they do that for 7 days. People should go in and maybe make cook for them, and there'll be prayers in the house, morning and evening prayers, and so people will go along
So the prayers, I'm really sorry. The prayers, are they for 7 days, or do they still do prayers like every day, or?
Well, the prayers they do are not, for the most part, are not special. They're just the prayers that every very observant Jewish person should do. You should pray 3 times a day. Yes, three times a day. You should. And so what they do is those prayers. They do those in the house of mourning. But what we'd do is after one of the usually the evening when people go around, they say the normal prayer that you would do if you were in a synagogue, you could do it at home, and then they might take a passage, I think a quotation from one of the people who have commented on the Jewish Bible, on the Bible, or some of the. There's lots of codes and lots of sayings, and they'll try. And so the rabbi usually will try and find something which is something from the sages. That's the right word. A quotation from one of the sages, which they felt was most relevant to the qualities of the person, and say that, and they also. Say to the person, you should be comforted like the mother comforted you. I can't remember the exact words. You should be comforted like a mother who comforts Jerusalem, or something like this. It's a traditional word that they use, and so that's sort of additional. But the prayers, they say, actually, interestingly, this is a bit technical and probably more detailed. Though you sit 7 days, when I've experienced this myself with my parents passed away.
I'm really sorry to hear that.
Those days, that time goes really fast. Actually, and it takes 7 days to sit in the house for 7 days. But first of all, when you leave the cemetery, you don't start. You start that evening. But you actually, the 7th day, you get set up on the 6 days. On the 7th day, you only sit for the first, for the morning, and then you get up. When it comes to the Sabbath, which obviously is going to the week includes, which runs Friday to Saturday, you're not supposed to sit then. So you get up on Friday afternoon, Friday lunchtime. You don't start till Sunday morning, so that's another day and a half out. So, and by the time you've sort of got, so you go to the funeral, and by the time you got back, it's late. It's early, late afternoon. That's one day gone. The next day, so there's actually, don't say 7 days. It's actually about When it comes to it, usually 4 or 5. And if it happens to coincide with the Jewish festival, you don't do that either. You don't sit. You don't. As I said, you sit shiva is what it's called. Sitting 7 days. You don't do it either.
Oh, I understand.
Like my aunt died, my late aunt died. It happened to coincided with this festival and Jewish festival, and it was one day. Then you're not supposed to sit on these days. So my mother felt a bit cheated because for her sister, but that's. Okay, so sorry, I'm rambling a bit, possibly. So.
No, that's fine. I completely understand. Because with Islam, I think it's 14 days you have to do prayers, and it is quite similar, as you just said, and it's quite interesting. Also,
personally, I found is that I found it actually quite very. I can't know the word to express it. I'm trying to think of the adjective. I found it a very. I like the institute of the sitting shiva myself. I like it mainly because after the funeral, it gives you a framework in which to live. You go back, you think you're going to take prayers. People come in, you chat to them. It takes your mind off things. You can reminisce about. And it gives you that space for 7 days. And again, in Islam, it will be 40, where you're not at work, you're not going to do it, but you're spending special time out in remembrance of the person who's died. And then after the 7 days, you can face things, go back to normal. I feel very sorry for my sort of Christian colleagues who, when they pass away, where they've gone. Someone's died, and they thought, well, what am I going to do for 10 days now?
Yeah, exactly.
So I'll go to work. You think, well, and they're trying to cover it when they're still sore, So it's it's just a personal opinion. Other people, Jewish people, said they don't like it. They said, no, I feel like I'm in a goldfish bowl with lots of people coming around watching me, and I've got to perform, and I've got to be sociable, and I don't want to be. So it's different people have different attitudes, but that's personal and.
What about in your religion? Do you guys believe in life after death?
I think yes, there is a belief. Now, this I always got a bit confused with this one. But my time there is a very strict belief in life after death. I always thought traditional Judaism didn't believe in it, but in fact, some said no, that's wrong. The concept in Judaism is the soul. So when you die, your soul returns to God, to where it came.
Yes.
And this concept in Judaism of the Messiah, which I think actually is shared in Islam and also shared in Christianity.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
And believe in Judaism that when the Messiah comes, the souls of all the departed will come back to life again, will all live again. So obviously, therefore there must be life after death.
Yeah.
But we don't have. My understanding is there's no concepts as in I think in Hindu or whatever of reincarnation. I think it may be, or maybe what I describe as reincarnation. But I think in some religions, I can't remember. I think it's about this, but I don't know if it's Buddhism, but Hindu. You go back, and if you've been a bad person, you'll be as a lowly animal. If you're a good person,
you're a higher animal.
And I don't believe there's no concepts of that nature.
Yeah, exactly.
In Judaism, it's just your soul, but then you're now going into what is God and what's the concept of God, and if you should ever get into this, I'm still reading some of the. It's a matter of just interest.
Yeah.
What are the concepts in some of the basic concepts in Judaism? And it starts getting very, very metaphysical and understanding, because the whole concept of God in Judaism is that you don't understand it. It's just taken that you will never understand what God is. And it's your job to try and understand it, but you'll never will, because it's beyond human capability. But it gets really difficult, and you start anyway. So that's another thing. But the idea of the soul going back to God, well, what's God? And so it's very, very, Anyway, so that to answer that question, yes, we do believe in life after death, but it's not as prominent. I want to say, in some ways, it's extremely fundamental, but it's not kind of prominent in the religion.
Thank you for the answer. And there's another question. If, for example, if a husband and wife, and for example, if husband or the wife, one or another spouse passes away, and does your religion give the right for that person to get remarried, or is there a certain time when to get remarried, or isn't there any
I don't think there's any restrictions, but people can remarry, certainly, and they do. There is one thing, and it's obscure, and it did happen. I think and it's based on the Bible, going back, is that if a woman's husband dies,
yeah,
and then she needs to remarry, but she's got no children, and I think it is in a very special circle, and she's got maybe. It's something like the brother of the person that. I have to look this up. It's like the brother of the person that her brother-in-law, the brother of the late husband, has got to give permission in some way. But because it's happened actually with my uncle remarried, or something like if she remarries somebody that also hasn't got children, it's a very unusual set of circumstances where you got to choose, get permission. And apparently, because this happened to an uncle of mine who wanted to remarry a woman, and who was Jewish, but she had no children, and she had to go through some ceremony go through some sorts of ceremony, which she found a bit odd and stressful and didn't like it at all, to tell the truth. But that's the only time I've heard of it.
Yeah.
But I know that she didn't have any children, and I know it was, and I think she had only. I don't know. There's other circumstances that makes it very, very rare. But generally, people can. But the answer is people can remarry. If someone dies, actually, you can remarry.
And how can that person overcome the grief of that loss of the person? Is there any sort of thing they can do for that person who has left this world?
You mean in terms of remarrying? Are you talking about when somebody remarries? Somebody?
Yeah, in general, yeah.
I'm not aware of anything where people would do anything other than the normal procedures. If somebody dies and remarry fully, fully accept that you can. After all, in Judaism, you're allowed to divorce. You're allowed to divorce. So, sorry. Okay, yeah. Okay, yeah. Does that actually help you? Because I need to be actually. Hopefully that's useful. Where will this appear, by the way, or is it just being used for a study?
Oh, it's just.
So, if you need to quote who I am.
Yeah, that's fine.
And the chairman of the Luton synagogue, you can say you spoke to. Though I'm not a rabbi.
Okay,
but
that's
all right. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much for answering all the questions. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
No, you're welcome.
Bye.